Hey guys, tonight we are stepping into the worn-out shoes of a 17th-century postman. Imagine the faint ringing of a church bell in some foggy little town, still half asleep. The sun hasn't even tried to peek over the rooftops yet, and here you are, tugging on boots that are already damp from yesterday's mud. The whole village is silent, except for a rooster that clearly didn't get the memo about subtle wake-up calls. Your job? To deliver scraps of paper and folded parchment that could contain love, money, or just someone complaining about hay prices. It sounds noble until you realize most of your life is damp socks, heavy bags, and long miles. Honestly, you probably wouldn't survive a week of it, unless you've got a secret passion for blisters. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, tell me in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is right now. I love knowing who's winding down on the other side of the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The morning bell rings and you shoulder your post bag. It's heavier than you'd prefer, but lighter than yesterday, and you already know which villages will get your grumpier side today. The post station where you collect your bag is no palace, more like a drafty stable converted into an office. There's always the faint smell of hay and horse sweat, mixed with wax from the seals on letters. You pick through the pile, some sheets of parchment for a nearby monastery, a long scroll bound with string for a tax collector, and a couple of personal notes sealed with sloppy blobs of red wax. You don't peek, of course, you're an honest postman, but you do imagine. Everyone imagines. Historians still argue whether early 17th-century postal workers were allowed to carry private letters or only official ones. Some suggest that in many towns, the so-called Royal Mail ignored ordinary people, leaving private couriers like you to bridge the gap. Others argue that the division was fuzzy and villagers slipped coins into your hand to sneak letters into your bag alongside official dispatches. Either way, your bag feels like a strange blend of empire and gossip. You tighten the leather strap across your chest. The buckle squeaks. The strap is cracked. You tell yourself it'll last another season, though you know you'll end up trying to fix it with twine before long. Outside, the air is crisp. A mist clings to the fields, turning fence posts into ghostly silhouettes. Somewhere in the distance, a cow moos, sounding as tired as you feel. A mainstream fact here. In 17th-century Europe, bells really did mark time since most villagers lacked clocks. You lived your life by tolling metal, whether you liked it or not. The bell doesn't ask if you're ready, it just tells you the road won't wait. As you adjust your bag, you glance at the letters again. The handwriting fascinates you. Some elegant loops of ink, some frantic scratches like the writer was in a hurry, or drunk, possibly both. There's always one letter with smudged ink, like the sender sneezed halfway through. You wonder if their loved one will laugh or just squint in frustration. A quirky tidbit. In some towns, postal workers were rumored to be able to read letters without opening them. Not actual magic, of course, but they supposedly studied the outside so carefully, handwriting, seals, even the thickness of paper, that they could guess contents. Imagine developing the Sherlock Holmes level of postal gossip just from sniffing parchment. You probably couldn't resist bragging about that skill in the tavern later. Today, you catch a faint smell of resin from one wax seal, likely frankincense, maybe shipped from far away. It's a little whiff of the world beyond your muddy roads, and it makes you grin despite your yawns. As the bell fades, you adjust your cloak, tug it tighter around your shoulders, and step outside the station's low door. The world is gray but expectant. Your boots crunch against gravel. Somewhere a dog barks, already warning the neighborhood that you're up to something suspicious. Delivering mail, the most scandalous of crimes. You think briefly about the monks down the road. They'll want their parchment before their midday meal, otherwise they'll grumble in Latin that you can't understand but definitely feel in your bones. The manor house wants their long scroll by tomorrow, but you'll try to get it there today, partly to avoid trouble, partly to avoid storing that heavy thing in your bag overnight. And the personal notes, you know, those are the real treasure. The villagers you hand them to will squint at the seals like they're holding the crown jewels. The morning air is damp, but you breathe it in. Better than the stale hay inside. Your legs already ache, though you haven't gone far, but there's a certain peace in the ritual. Step, bag shift, creak of leather, deep breath, repeat. You glance at the horizon. It's a pale smear, no sun yet, but enough to guide you. And somewhere down that road, miles away, someone is waiting for a folded square of parchment that might change their whole day, or at least give them a reason to gossip with their neighbor. And with that thought, you begin your route, bell still echoing faintly behind you, the day stretching ahead like one long parchment scroll waiting to be unrolled.
The road greets you the way it always does, with mud. Thick, slippery mud that sucks at your boots as though the earth itself is trying to steal your footwear. You set one foot down, it squelches. You lift it up, it makes that ridiculous slurping noise you swear could wake the dead. There's no escaping it. Roads in the 17th century are more suggestion than infrastructure. You start off anyway, one cautious step at a time. Your bag bumps against your hip, its weight swinging like a pendulum. Every few paces you adjust the strap, but it never feels right. Maybe it's designed to keep you humble. Mainstream fact. In most parts of Europe during this time, roads outside the biggest cities weren't paved at all. Royal highways occasionally had gravel or stone, but the moment you left those, it was dirt. Dirt that turned to dust in summer and knee-deep muck in spring. You, as the poor postman, don't get to choose the season. You try to picture what this same road will look like in a few months. Dry, dusty, perhaps even pleasant. But that's not today. Today, the mud tries to swallow your boot with every step. At one point, you nearly topple forward, arms flailing, bag swinging dangerously close to landing in a puddle. You recover, looking around sheepishly, even though the only witnesses are crows perched on a fence. One caws, as if laughing at you. You mutter something unrepeatable under your breath and keep going. Historians still argue whether couriers like you more often walked or rode horses. Some say the government-issued routes were almost always covered by mounted riders. Others point out that in rural areas, horses were expensive luxuries and most local messengers trudged on foot. You can feel your legs voting for the second theory right now. Your cloak doesn't help much. It's damp around the edges, already splattered. Still, you pull it tighter, trying to ward off the morning chill. You pass a hedgerow where frost clings stubbornly to the leaves. A hare darts across the path, startled by your crunching steps. For a fleeting moment, you envy the hare's speed. Imagine being that nimble instead of dragging this load like an unwilling mule. A quirky tidbit. Some postal guides from the era recommended carrying a spare pair of shoes, not for comfort, but because muddy roads were so likely to destroy them. Travelers wrote of abandoning ruined footwear in the muck and trudging on barefoot until the next town. You glance down at your own boots and quietly pray they make it to evening. If not, well, you can always blame occupational hazard when you turn them in for repairs. You come to a small bridge, or, well, what counts as one. Really, it's just a few planks across a stream. The water below gurgles cheerfully, mocking your cautious steps. You balance, arms out like a clumsy acrobat, and make it across without incident. Victory! You smile at yourself, half proud, half aware that no one else cares. That's the life of the postman. Small triumphs over mud and wobbly planks. The road curves, leading past a field where a farmer is already at work. He raises a hand in greeting, squinting at you from underneath his hat. You wave back, but don't stop. You know if you linger, he'll corner you with half an hour of complaints about taxes or crop failures. That's not gossip you're paid to deliver. Your bag shifts again, and you feel the scroll inside digging against your ribs. You curse the tax collectors silently. Nobles never think about how heavy their words are when they're wrapped in parchment and ribbon. Every step feels like you're carrying a brick in your bag. By now, the mud has caked around your boots, making them heavier with each mile. You scrape them against a rock, shedding some of the muck, though more will cling soon enough. It's like walking with ankle weights before gyms even existed. You tell yourself at least it's good exercise, though it doesn't feel like a consolation when your toes are freezing. The village bell behind you has long faded, replaced by the steady rhythm of your own trudging. The world feels quiet, like it belongs only to you and your letters. The mist lifts slowly, revealing hedges, thatched roofs in the distance, and the faint promise of the next stop. And through it all, the slurping mud, the swinging bag, the chilly air, you keep going. Because someone, somewhere, is waiting for you to appear at their door with ink-stained parchment. Whether it's a love note, a tax demand, or just an uncle reminding them about hay prices, you're the thin, muddy line connecting them all.
The road has flattened out now, less mud, more rutted dirt. Your boots are still damp, but at least they're not being swallowed whole anymore. The morning is brightening, the mist thinning into gentle wisps that cling stubbornly to low fields. Birds are louder here, sparrows darting between hedges, crows overhead, and the occasional goose honking as if it's auditioning for the role of roadside alarm clock. You pat the bag at your side. The letters rustle faintly, almost like they're whispering their secrets to one another. And here's the thing, you can't help but wonder. Each folded square, each parchment scroll sealed with wax is a locked door you'll never open. You're the courier, not the reader. But the curiosity still hums. Mainstream fact, by the 17th century, letters were folded into their own envelopes, self-sealing, with wax and string, rather than slipped into the paper envelopes we think of today. Privacy was, in theory, absolute. Of course, privacy is also a suggestion, and you can't help noticing how tempting those wax seals look. One particularly fancy letter juts against your ribs. Its seal is pressed with some kind of crest, probably belonging to a minor noble who insists on adding 3 extra flourishes just to remind you he's important. Another is less tidy, wax dribbled down the fold in a lopsided blob. You smile. Someone clearly struggled with their candle. Maybe they were in a hurry, or maybe they were just bad at it. Historians still argue whether peasants commonly wrote their own letters or relied on scribes. Literacy rates were uneven, and in some places, only priests or notaries could reliably scratch out correspondence. So when you see a clumsy blob of wax, you imagine some frustrated farmer squinting over his inkpot, muttering about how much trouble it is to write 2 pigs for sale. You shake the bag gently, listening to the muffled rustle. Each letter has its own weight, its own voice. You picture them not as paper, but as personalities traveling with you. The elegant scroll, that's the nobleman in the corner, demanding the best seat. The smudged one, that's the shy neighbor who always mumbles at the tavern. And the one that smells faintly of resin, that's the mysterious traveler leaning back with secrets they won't share. Quirky tidbit, some letters of this era were actually perfumed, dipped, or dabbed with scented oils so that the aroma would linger even after long journeys. Imagine delivering a note that smells like lavender to someone who hasn't bathed in a week. You'd be doing them a favor just by handing it over. You sniff at the bag, half wishing one of yours carried such a pleasant distraction, but no luck today. Just parchment and faint wax smoke. As you trudge, your imagination runs wild. What if this letter with the sloppy wax seal is a love note? What if someone's heart is dangling in your bag, waiting to be dropped on a doorstep? You picture the scene, a blushing girl opening the fold, scanning the ink, smiling shyly at words written by candlelight. Or maybe she frowns, confused by the clumsy handwriting. Either way, you carried the moment in your muddy satchel. You chuckle. You know better than to get romantic. It's more likely a merchant nagging about late payment. Still, your brain insists on daydreaming. That's part of what keeps the miles moving. The morning air sharpens as the road narrows between hedgerows. A dog barks somewhere ahead, and you tense instinctively. Dogs are part of the job description no one told you about. You give your bag a reassuring pat, as though the letters themselves could ward off canine teeth. Back to your musings. You've heard rumors that some postmen, less honest ones, did, in fact, steam open seals, peek inside, and reseal them carefully. Was it curiosity? Spying? Maybe both. Historians still argue whether this was tolerated by officials or harshly punished when discovered. You, at least, stick to your daydreams. Letters feel safer that way. Better to imagine secrets than risk being caught with melted wax on your hands. The road rises slightly, giving you a view of fields stretching outward. Thin smoke curls from a distant chimney, promising warmth you won't feel for hours yet. You roll your shoulders and adjust the strap again, imagining the letters shifting, settling into their places. It almost feels like they sigh with you. Another mile slips by. You pass a low stone wall, mossy and uneven. You pause, leaning against it, catching your breath. Your bag is lighter than yesterday's load, but somehow your shoulders still ache. As you rest, you tap the edge of the bag gently, like drumming on a locked treasure chest. "What are you hiding in there?" you murmur. A crow nearby answers with a caw. You smile. "Thanks for the input." When you stand again, the bag feels a little friendlier, like it's sharing the walk instead of dragging you down. Letters, after all, are more than ink and paper. They're voices, stitched together across distance. And for a brief, silly moment, you feel like the world's quietest party host, carrying all those conversations to their waiting ears.
Your stomach growls. Of course it does. You've barely been on the road a couple of hours, and already the dream of bread and cheese is tugging at your mind like a particularly persuasive donkey. You pat your bag, letters on one side, food bundle on the other. One is noble duty, the other is survival. Guess which one you're more excited about. You find a spot by the side of the road, a low stone fence where the moss cushions your back if you lean just right. The air is brisk, but at least the sun is beginning to show itself, shyly edging over the horizon. You rummage through your satchel's side pocket and pull out a hunk of bread, yesterday's cheese, and a small flask that may or may not contain more water than ale. Don't judge, you're a postman in the 17th century. Hydration rules are different here. Mainstream fact, bread and cheese were indeed the staple diet of ordinary travelers in this period. Not fancy cheese, nothing that would make a Parisian swoon, just hard, salty stuff that survived a few days without turning into a science experiment. You gnaw at yours, breaking off bits with your teeth. It squeaks between your molars, a sure sign of both its freshness and its stubbornness. A quirky tidbit, ale in the 17th century was often safer to drink than water. Wells could be contaminated, rivers were shared with livestock, and let's just say clean drinking water wasn't exactly a catchphrase yet. Ale, mildly alcoholic and boiled in brewing, killed off most of what wanted to kill you, which explains why your hydration flask leaves you pleasantly warm after a swig. You chew slowly, letting the rhythm of eating distract you from the rhythm of walking. The bread is dry, crumbling a little, but dipped in ale, it softens into something almost comforting. You lean your head back against the stone and close your eyes for a moment, savoring. The sounds of the countryside surround you, birds squabbling overhead, a distant cow complaining, the shuffle of leaves in a breeze. Historians still argue whether postmen on rural routes received official rations from stations or were left to fend for themselves. Some records suggest inns along the way were paid to provide meals, but in practice, many travelers brought their own provisions to avoid expense or disappointment. Judging by the firmness of this cheese, you're definitely in the fend-for-yourself camp today. As you munch, your mind wanders. You picture nobles at their banquets, roasted meats, delicate pastries, sweet wines, while you sit here trying to gnaw through a crust that could double as a defensive shield. Still, there's something satisfying about it. You joke to yourself that this is farm-to-table dining, centuries before trendy cafes would charge extra for the concept. A dog barks in the distance again.
Sharper this time. You glance up, wary. Nothing appears, so you go back to your bread. Your joke quota for the morning is filled when you realize that the cheese smells faintly like your boots. You grimace, but keep eating. Hunger is a persuasive editor. By the time you finish, crumbs cling to your cloak, and the last sip of ale lingers warmly in your chest. You feel both heavier and lighter. Heavier in the belly, lighter in the spirit. For a moment, you even forget about the blisters forming in your boots. You brush off your hands, carefully tuck the flask away, and check the bag of letters. Still secure, still pressing against your ribs like impatient passengers waiting for their stop. You sigh good-naturedly and push yourself back onto the road. The next stretch is quieter. The world feels almost suspended. No farmers yet in the fields, no wagons rattling past, just you and the slow crunch of your boots. The ale has softened your mood, and you catch yourself humming under your breath. Not a song anyone else would recognize, just a tuneless rhythm to keep your steps steady. You imagine how your day will look in 100 years. Will someone laugh at how quaint it seems to carry paper across mud for hours on end? Or will they envy the slowness, the quiet, the absence of ringing devices demanding attention every 5 minutes? Historians still argue whether postmen on rural routes received official rations from stations or were left to fend for themselves. You know firsthand that they were both harder and simpler. Harder on your feet, simpler on your mind. A gust of wind tugs at your cloak. You tighten it, tug the strap of your bag into place, and start walking again. The taste of bread lingers faintly, mixed with the tang of ale. It's not luxurious, but it's enough to fuel another mile, maybe 2. And so you move on, a little heavier in the belly, a little lighter in the spirit. Still the quiet thread weaving villages together, one folded letter at a time.
The rain eases, replaced by the quiet chatter of the road itself, boots squelching, bag creaking, and the occasional bird startled from the hedgerows. You're in the long middle stretch of your route now, where boredom and curiosity battle it out in your head. Fortunately, the road brings company. A farmer appears first, pushing a creaky wheelbarrow stacked with kindling. His hat sags low over his eyes, and he lifts it briefly to nod at you. You nod back, polite, careful not to slow down too much. You know from experience that if you pause, he'll launch into a 30-minute debate about whether the new tax collectors are secretly allergic to honesty. You let the nod do the talking and keep walking. Not long after, a group of children trails you for a few paces. They giggle at the sight of your bag, whispering as though it holds treasure. One brave boy asks, "Is it gold?" You chuckle and shake your head. "Better," you whisper. "It's words." They blink at you, confused, then burst into laughter as if you've just told the world's worst riddle. Before long, they peel off back to their cottages, still giggling. Mainstream fact: in the 17th century, children were often fascinated by letters because so few of them could read. A folded parchment sealed with wax was as mysterious as a locked chest, and the bearer of those secrets, yes, that's you, seemed almost magical. A quirky tidbit: some towns grew so familiar with their postmen that children would follow along the route to announce their arrival, like an impromptu parade. Imagine a gaggle of kids shouting, "Letters! Letters!" while you trudge, pretending you're not flattered. You wonder if you'll earn that kind of following one day, or if you'll just keep getting mocked for muddy boots. As the road curves, a dog trots out from a yard. You freeze. It stares, head cocked, tail stiff. Then, just as you prepare for battle, it bounds over and starts sniffing your satchel. You exhale in relief. The dog clearly has a nose for parchment, or maybe the faint whiff of cheese still lingering from your earlier snack. You gently push it away, laughing under your breath. "Sorry, boy, no bones in here, just overdue tax notices." The dog sneezes, unimpressed, and wanders back to its yard. Historians still argue whether rural postmen were seen as trusted figures or treated with suspicion. In some regions, villagers greeted the courier warmly, eager for news. In others, they eyed him warily, worried about spies or gossip. Judging from the mix of giggles and barking you've received today, the truth is probably somewhere in between. The road grows lively for a moment as you meet a peddler with a cart full of pots and pans. He jingles cheerfully as he passes, nodding and muttering something about the weather. You glance back and notice the children from earlier tailing him now, fascinated by the clanging metal. You can't help but smirk. Apparently, your bag of words lost its shine to shiny cookware. Typical. As you trudge on, you realize these small encounters keep the monotony at bay. Every nod, every bark, every giggle is a reminder that you're not just trudging through mud and drizzle, you're part of the living road, woven into the daily rhythm of the countryside. You are, in a way, the moving gossip column of the 17th century. You glance down at the letters once again. They don't reveal their secrets, but you can imagine the voices waiting at the other end, the noble sniffing at muddy boots, the sweetheart clutching a folded note, the farmer sighing at overdue debts. And scattered along the way are the children, dogs, and curious strangers who make your day feel less like a lonely march and more like a wandering play. The sun peeks briefly from the clouds, casting a shimmer on puddles and glints on your damp cloak. You grin, just a little. For now, you're less a soggy scarecrow and more a reluctant hero, carrying not swords or gold, but words that will ripple out in laughter, arguments, sighs, and maybe even a kiss or two.
The road decides it has had enough of being polite. The sun creeps higher, but instead of warming you, it just makes the clouds of your breath look slightly ridiculous. Then the drizzle begins. Not a dramatic storm, not the cinematic kind of rain that lets you yell, "Curse the heavens!" Just a steady mist that seeps into everything. Your cloak absorbs it like a sponge. The shoulders go first, then the seams, and soon you feel each drop sliding down toward your elbows. You tug the hood tighter, but it only shifts the discomfort. The bag on your side seems to grow heavier, as if the letters themselves are sulking about the weather. The wax seals hold, thank goodness, but you picture their edges softening with every damp gust. The last thing you want is to deliver someone's heartfelt letters smelling like mildew. Mainstream fact: early mail routes in Europe didn't stop for weather. Rain, wind, even snowstorms, couriers were expected to push through. The motto of reliability wasn't carved into postal services yet, but the expectation was already there. If people had trusted you with their words, you delivered, soggy boots or not.